Hey guys, how's it going? Today I have another political rant, so if you guys don't like politics, feel free to skip this one. I want to talk a little bit more about Trump supporters, what I think about them. Actually, first of all, I want to go to this other vlog I did a few weeks ago, and I want to expand on a little bit more of what I said in the video. I said it in the comment here. I forgot to say it in the video. Part of the reason I like South Korea so much out of all the different Asian countries is because it's one of the most socially conservative countries in Asia. And I'm not a Hillary or Trump supporter. I'm fairly socially conservative, I guess. So I like that. But I'm pretty sick of people blaming Obama for everything, even when he's out of office. Like, people forget that it's Congress that makes and passes bills, and Obama just signs them. And I mean, he can do executive orders and stuff, but for the big bills like Obamacare, for example, like it had to go through Congress first. The financial reform bill and NAFTA, all those things had to go through Congress. So it's not just all Democrats or Obama's fault for everything, since like Congress was split between both parties, and I believe House Republicans had the majority, and since 2010, right? Yeah, so a lot of it was Republicans as well, not just Democrats. Also want to mention something is I'm not a supporter of gun rights, and I made another vlog about this before, because it comes down to it causes more problems than it solves, and I trust trained cops to use guns more than I trust the average citizen. I think it's crazy if you just give the average citizen guns because they don't know what they're doing. And yeah, I'm definitely a supporter of capital punishment, though. I don't understand why we have to, go through this very long, convoluted legal process to give the death penalty to these guys, like Charles Manson or Dylan Roof, that guy who did that South Carolina church shooting, or the guy who did the Aorra shooting, that guy who killed 12 people in Colorado Aurora Theater. Like, they should just be sent to death right away. Like, they're clearly guilty, right? And I don't know why it takes so long for them to bring in a lawyer. Like, what could a lawyer possibly do to, like, I guess you could say, like, mental illness and stuff, but I don't know. Like, for most of these, I think it's just a waste of time. Like, why even bother getting a lawyer for this? Just, they're clearly guilty. Just, like, send them off to the firing squad. They had to do this lethal injection thing because it's like more humane and stuff, but like they're gonna die anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Just use whatever's fastest, in my opinion. Like, I don't get what's with the year-long trials and stuff, and then you put them into prison, wasting taxpayer money on that garbage. I don't like it. Also believe Trump does care about America somewhat, but in his own way. The media does twist his words around, but I mean, mainstream media is biased. But yeah, I don't think he has concrete plans for fixing America. And I looked at his tax plans, and for most people, it doesn't really change from the current tax plan. It's only if you're making over like 300K a year, then you get a tax break. Your taxes go down. I've already explained why tax cuts for the rich don't work in this video here. So this video I did 3 weeks ago, I've already explained why tax cuts for the rich don't work and trickle-down economics does not work. And he wants to bring jobs back to America by taxing companies who outsource jobs overseas. But bringing jobs back would just increase the price of goods, and because the USA has higher labor costs, and it also makes Chinese companies even more competitive due to their lower labor costs and lower price points. And I think that people would much rather buy cheaper products that are made in other countries, which we're essentially doing now, than pay double the money and buy American products, right? Like, you give the average Trump supporter who are probably living in a poor rural area the choice between, like a $15 t-shirt versus an American-made t-shirt that costs $100. I think it's a very easy decision for them to make. And yeah, so the whole idea of bringing jobs back to America is probably not going to work. All right, so this is the new post I made, and I made it because just yesterday I actually unfollowed all the major news outlets on my Facebook, like CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, Economist, Time, BBC, because pretty much all the news that was on there was reporting about things that Donald Trump did, like the refugee ban. And because of the nature of his politics, they just tend to be very divisive, and a lot of arguing and bickering happens. And I'm really like sick and tired of it, really, because it's just constantly arguing from both sides, the conservatives versus the liberals, the Democrats versus the Republicans, the Trump supporters versus the Hillary supporters. And none of them are going to convince the other side. Like, they're both so stubborn on their beliefs, they're never going to convince each other. So I think it's like a complete waste of time. Yeah, I'm so tired of feuding with all these people. And most of my arguments come against Trump supporters because I find that Trump supporters, I'm not saying that Hillary supporters or like Democrats or whatever don't lie, but it's just that Trump supporters tend to, well, a lot of their arguments just don't make any sense to me. And I have seen a sizable portion of them with their well, you'll see what they say. It's just it doesn't really make sense to me. Yeah, and I'm not saying that all Trump voters are like this. I've seen a sizable portion of them, and there's three main things that really annoy me about Trump supporters, and a lot of them on social media, in particular, that I had to argue with, which are really frustrating actually to argue against because of how ignorant they are. And so I have these three that I listed here. So number one is the fact that they don't believe in the mainstream media. They think it's fake news. But they like to make up their own facts and they like to spread misinformation to the public. And they believe fake stories from the right-wing media. So they call all the media that are negative to Trump like fake news, right? Anything that's negative to Trump, oh, it must be fake news. And I'm not saying that the mainstream media isn't biased. I mean, they certainly are. They're definitely liberal biased, or left-wing biased, but they're not by any means fake, right? Like the stories, even though they have a liberal spin to them, they're certainly like derived from actual events that happen, right? On the other hand, Trump supporters actually believe actual fake news that never happened, like fake events that never happened, and they spread this misinformation to people online, which is really, really annoying, and it just makes people confused even more, right? Yeah, like one thing I noticed about the left versus right argument, left wing versus right wing, Democrat versus Republican argument is that I mean, I'm not saying Democrats don't lie, but they lie far less than the Republicans do. And the Republicans, like right wing and Trump supporters and right wing voters, like they believe just misinformation. Like it just doesn't, it's just not rooted in any kind of fact whatsoever. And here are just a few of the things or a few of the stories that they actually believe that are pretty much false. Like they like to believe that Obama is a Muslim born in another country. That's something that Trump originally started with, right, with his whole birther issue. And that's been proven to be false. And Trump himself has said that it's false now. And then, of course, his supporters stopped believing it. But back in 2011, 2012, a lot of people actually believed this, and they mostly came from the right wing. Yeah, they also believe that Obama ruined the economy. A lot of people said that when the unemployment numbers came up and it was only 4.7% or 4.9%, down from a high of 10.2%. That was like back in 2009 when Obama first took office. So obviously improved the economy, stock market more than doubled. But people still like to think that Obama ruined the economy, for whatever reason. Maybe they hate Obama. They just think he didn't do well for the economy. I think it's just because they're political bias. That's it. That Obamacare raised healthcare premiums, which is false. It's been increasing way before Obamacare came into effect. That Obama caused the race relations to worsen. Some people say that, which is completely false too. That's not under Obama's control. I mean, I agree it's been, the race relations have been worsened, but it's definitely not Obama's fault. They believe that socialism is the same as communism, which is not. I mean, they throw these words around a lot: Marxism, socialism, communism, as if they're the same thing, but they're not the same thing. That would mean that North Korea, which is communist, would be the same as Canada, which is socialist. It doesn't make any sense. They like to believe that millions of illegals and dead people vote in the election, just like Trump does. There's no evidence for this, but they like to believe that. And of course, they always vote for the Democrat. Right? And I'm thinking if they actually voted like that, then why couldn't Hillary get the extra 70,000 votes to actually win the election? The margins were so small in the states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Why could she get millions of voters somehow back from the dead, and yet she didn't, get those voters to vote in Wisconsin or Michigan. She only needed like a couple thousand, you know, like how can you believe that when you won the election? I don't understand. Okay, they like to believe that Bill Clinton was a rapist, and a lot of people say this. A lot of Trump supporters like to point to this story. Oh, Bill Clinton raped this girl, this woman, and that woman, but it's completely false. And yeah, they like to say that the mainstream media doesn't cover these allegations and stuff, but that's because they're false. In response to the refugee ban, they say that Obama and Jimmy Carter did the same thing. Well, they didn't. And numerous videos online on YouTube have proved that it's not the same thing. They've explained why Trump's ban is different than Obama and Jimmy Carter's restrictions. They didn't do a blanket ban like Trump did, right? And it was all from a cause. And Trump's actually didn't have a cause, right? And why would Trump ban those 7 countries, but he doesn't ban people from Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or Egypt or UAE? You know, those countries actually had the people that committed 9/11. Why didn't he ban those countries? You know, if he really wants to protect us from terror, he should have banned those countries too. And yeah, and often Trump supporters, they say these things that have no shred of evidence to it at all. They give no shred of evidence or proof. At least when you go to the liberal channels like Vox, for example. Yeah, of course, Vox is biased, but at least they back up their statements with hard sources and statistics. And the Young Turks, which is also a really popular YouTube channel, they're definitely liberal leaning, but they also criticize the Democrats a lot, and they also back up their statements with stats and hard facts. But Trump supporters, they never back up their statements. Then they always cite that mainstream media doesn't cover these allegations. But as I said, the mainstream media doesn't cover them because they're not true. They're fake stories. So it's ironic that they call the mainstream media fake, like CNN, but they believe their own fake stories from some right-wing blogger or like right-wing conspiracy website, you know, or Alex Jones, you know, like that kind of stuff. It's way more fake than anything that comes out of the mainstream media, and yet they believe it. Another thing is the polls. Like they don't believe in any mainstream media polling after election. Oh, all because the election polls were off, right? Well, first of all, the election polls were actually correct in the national vote count, where Clinton won by 2%. Yep, she lost obviously, but she won the popular vote. Secondly, I know the Trump voters are mostly uneducated, but I want to point out to them that there's a difference between predictive polls and current polling. So predictive polls, like election polls, they try to predict the future, and anytime you try to guess the future, there's a chance you could be wrong because it's the future, right? No one can really predict the future. So there's a chance that you could be wrong. And of course, the election polls were off because they were predictive polls, and they could have oversampled, they could have undersampled. I don't know what happened, but because they were predictive polls, they predicted wrong. And that's just the thing you get when you try to predict the future. But current polling, stats on the other hand, like the unemployment numbers, the approval rating of the president, like they're polling people right now. So how could that be wrong? Like, there's a difference between predictive polls, which are entirely different than current polling, right? Because they're not predicting the future. This is what the data is like right now. This is what people think right now, right? They're not trying to predict the future. So people can't seem to understand the difference between a predictive poll, which tries to predict something in a future event, versus a current polling, which is a current event. So yeah, I don't think that they understand the difference. I actually have a few screenshots from things that I captured that show exactly what Trump supporters are like, what they believe. Here's one of them. Okay. And here's some people from some posts from Trump supporters right here. So a libtard journalist with a history being shown up by Trump attempts to get his digs in. It's going to be a rough 16 years for you, 8 Donald, 8 Ivanka. So I guess he wants Ivanka Trump to go in after Donald Trump somehow gets elected. I'm not even sure if he can survive the current presidency, given that the fact that he's done several things that could be considered unconstitutional. Right? He's done Richard Nixon stuff already in last week, firing people that don't agree with him and stuff like that. All right, this guy, the Martin Luther King bus being the PP hoax. This is from BuzzFeed, by the way, not from mainstream media. The fake election polls, those are not fake, by the way. They were just prediction polls that were off. There's a difference between, like I said, difference between predictive polls and current polling, and they're definitely not fake. Weapons of mass destruction. This came from the Bush administration. So I don't know why he's criticizing that. The media has zero credibility. Well, that's just what he thinks. Trump in 1 week has come through on all his promises. Stock market is at a record, and he goes on to say stuff like foreign relations have been never better, and that's completely false because he already is starting trade wars with China and Mexico. How could it be never better? It's just completely false. And stock market is at a record because Obama left it at the Dow Jones at 19,000. If Trump came to office, it's at 20,000. Wow, whoop-de-doo. You gained 1,000 points, whereas Obama freaking doubled the stock market. Like, wow. Okay, and then this one. You liberals are just so used to having conservative politicians with no spine, lying to twist and spin everything. And then someone stands up to all the lies. So this guy, I guess, is not a liberal or conservative. He just dislikes the mainstream. And they'll talk about this later. Slaughtering defenseless unborn babies. That seems like a like how can you be wait? So first of all, how can you be a baby if you're unborn? I thought like the human being, you like have to be born first to be considered that. And slaughtering, I don't know about that. I mean, if you were raped or something, would that be considered slaughter? And defenseless, well, I guess if you're in your mother's stomach, yeah, you would be defenseless. So I don't know. Challenge the liberal mainstream media. So I guess these people don't like Bush either. It's just a lot of Trump voters seem like they just distrust anything from the mainstream. Okay, let's go to the next one. Just like your polls that had Hillary winning. Enough of the propaganda already, you divisive idiots. All these polls coming out from that. This is in regards to the polling, right? That came out. Oh, by the way, I don't think this was in the View. Okay, there you guys. Now you can see what I was talking about. All these insane comments that I found. This is why I don't follow these Facebook pages anymore, because they just have insanely divisive rhetoric like this and comments like this that just seek to freaking divide people and stuff and get people angry. Okay, just like your polls at Hillary winning, and then these are people that don't believe the polls just because they don't know the difference between predictive polls and current polls. I'm not sure anyone. So basically, they think that just because the election polls were off, then every poll must be off. Every poll the media does from now on must be off. Yep, just because the election polls were off. And nobody believes your polls. Remember, ABC had Hillary winning. 484 people like it. 541,000 people like this one. Let's look at this one. I wonder who does the polls. 628 people like this one. And same idiots that Clinton ahead of Trump. So these are like, just people have mistrust in the media, I guess. Your polls are a joke after the election. 397. Like, you believe these ridiculous lying polls or something like that. No, it's more people distrusting the polls. Same pollsters who had Clinton win by a landslide. And just because they didn't ask me in the polling means that it must be completely fake and false. Yep. And just people distrusting the mainstream media because they don't want to believe in the facts. That's the problem. And this is comments from conservative Facebook page that had one guy quoting some code from, like, what is it? One of the executive laws from 1952 that said, oh, the president can choose whether to allow or not allow any immigrant in if he thinks it's a danger to the country. And then he cites, oh, Jimmy Carter used it, oh, Obama used it and stuff. But like I said, it's totally not true. And you can see many videos on YouTube saying that it's not the same kind of ban. And plus, this one was superseded by the Immigration Act of 1965, I think. But you have like 1,000 people or whatever liking, I think more than, yeah, you have like a whole bunch of people liking this ridiculous comment, which is full of misinformation. Oh, there's another one. So nice that liberals are willing, this is in response to one of the Muslim refugee bans. So nice that, like one of those stories, so nice that liberals are willing to leave their front doors. First of all, assuming, this is what I'm going to talk about next, assuming that if you're against the refugee ban, you must be a liberal, which is completely ridiculous to me. You don't have to be a liberal to be against the refugee ban. Like, you can be a conservative. There's nothing liberal or conservative about it, right? Like, it's just it's a policy outside of being liberal or conservative. It's a protectionist or isolationist policy. You don't have to be a liberal to be against it. But anyways, this guy assumes that you must be a liberal. So nice that liberals are willing to leave their front doors unlocked so any stranger can enter at their own will. Well, that would be true if your house was built by those strangers going to your house, and I mean, yeah, your house was built by immigrants, and whoever comes to your front door also builds your furniture, and you suddenly decide that now other strangers can't enter in anymore. That's basically, if I extend this analogy to something that makes sense, then yeah, it would be just like saying that, oh, we let people into the house before to build our furniture and stuff and become residents of the house, but now we suddenly don't want any people anymore because we think that they might be dangerous. So yeah, it's a very different break from American before, I guess after World War II, but before now. You crazy liberals march to create more division. Okay. So I guess we just should follow our crazy dictator, right? Our chairman. Same thing, like if you were under Hitler and stuff, and I know the Trump Hitler comparisons are getting old now, but yeah, let's just assume that you have a dictator and you have something like this. Oh, so you're saying we shouldn't protest? We're just gonna let the dictator do whatever he wants and not protest at all. Yeah, I mean, guess what happened in that scenario, right? Okay, and he says grow up, which is very interesting. Criminal Hillary, now know this guy's coming from. He believes all the fake news. Rapist husband, this is what I said about Bill Clinton being a rapist, and that's completely fake news, and he believes that. You're not my people. Well, it's nice to have a guy like this, right? And then he says, I wish I had as much time as liberals do. And he says this while posting this crazy ass long post that he didn't have to post. Like that probably got like 2,000 likes or whatever. This is stupid. All right, another one. This is on the White House page. We love you, President Trump. Almost 1,000 likes on this one. That's more than what Obama did in 8 years. That's such a stupid comment. And his name is Butthurt Libtard. And look at his profile picture. Like, this is the typical, like, you couldn't get more typical Trump voter than this, right? Some guy living in West Virginia or some redneck state like this, calling himself Butthurt Libtard, and then saying that's more than what Obama did in 8 years. Wow. Like, just pure ignorance. And it's 700 likes on that one. It's ridiculous. There's another one. 7 days in office. He already achieved more than Obama in 8 years. 600 likes. Thank you, Mr. President. 400 likes. It's probably more now because this was just 2 hours ago. Oh God, can we take 4 or 8 more years of winning? Like, I don't get it. Like, just calling, like, who's winning and who's losing? I don't understand. Like, what is this? This is like liberal America versus conservative America, Trump supporters versus Hillary supporters. Like, what is this? Is us versus them mentality. I want to talk about this. Like, why are you like pitting yourself against other Americans? It doesn't make any sense. I hate that. The same guy, 7 days in office, raised you more than Obama. Yeah, it's just stupid. It's asinine. Yeah, like their mentality is just nuts, and this is what I want to talk about. Trump supporters think it's a us versus them mentality. Like, everyone who is against Trump and for Obama must be a liberal, and everyone who's for Trump or against Obama must be a conservative. Like, they just think in black and white terms like this, and they make up stuff. They make up these name calling. It's like libtard, snowflake, and it's just so childish. Like, they're massive hypocrites. Literally, if Trump does the exact same thing, like, yeah, if Trump does the exact same thing, like if even he just renamed Obamacare Trump Care, I bet they would support it, right? Like, literally, if he does the exact same that they hated Obama for doing, they would praise Trump for it. It's crazy how much hypocrisy is there. And like, what's with the name calling? Like, are they in grade school or something? Like, you must be a libtard, you must be a snowflake. Like, freaking grow up, guys. Like, this, you're responsible adults. You're not in like elementary school calling each other names. And like, they say stuff like the the comment I just showed you, like, wow, we won, you lost, go to your little safe space and cry your liberal tears. I've seen so many comments similar to this online. And I don't understand. It's like, what is this, a game? Like, are you on a playground or something? Oh, what is this? We won, you lost? Who won, who lost? Like, this is America, right? It's either we all win or we all lose. We're all together, right? It's not like blue states versus red states, left wing versus right wing. It's like a freaking civil war again, right? And they don't understand how much Trump is brainwashing them and dividing them against each other. It's like, I really think that Trump is he's dividing Americans so much now, and people like Trump supporters ironically think that Obama did a lot of division, but the way that Trump has done it so far, you can see it all the time, like this stuff, like libtards versus snowflakes versus like Trumpites or something. Like it's literally half of America versus the other half of America. It's like pitting them against each other. It's completely insane, right? It's like completely dividing the country apart. And it's not about whether you support Trump or you support Obama or Hillary. There's like lots of people like me who are like independents or libertarians that support neither of them. Like I'm against government spending. I'm like for states' rights. I'm for lowering the debt. I'm for capital punishment. Those are conservative Republican values. But at the same time, I support raising taxes on the rich. I'm against war. I'm against guns. So that stance would make me a Democrat. So I'm basically not either a Democrat or a Republican. This stance would make Trump supporters spin their head because they're so used to the idea that you must either be Republican or you must be Democrat, and you must support all the values of one party or be against the values of that party. Like, it's not either extreme left or extreme right. It's actually a lot of people are in the middle like me, and they don't understand that. That's like a lot of these comments are going like you libtards or you liberals, or yeah, it's just generalizing a whole bunch of people that they just assume that if you're against Trump, you must be a liberal. But being against something like violating the Constitution, you don't have to be a liberal to be against that, right? I don't get it. And they say stuff like, oh, liberalism is a mental disease. Now, this is really annoying to me too. They say stuff like liberalism is a mental disease. Liberals are retarded. Ha ha ha. Hence the word libtard. But I'm not a liberal, but I do want to defend liberals because I want to point out the fact that some of the smartest people in the country are liberals, like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, like all the scientists, engineers, economists, academics, scholars, Nobel laureates, Hollywood. Like those guys are mostly liberal. But a majority of Trump's voters are uneducated, right? That's what the statistics show, right? A majority of Trump's voters are uneducated. So the irony here is just astounding. Just calling people that have traveled the world, associated with many people globally, have global interests, right? And they got master's and PhD degrees, and learning about the history of the country, and then you call what they have a mental disorder. And then you yourself probably have never, like them themselves have never traveled outside of America. They didn't go to college or university probably, and they believe in these right-wing conspiracy theories on these right-wing websites. So I wonder, like, who really has a mental disorder in this case? You know, you're calling like the well-educated, well-traveled people having a mental disorder. Like they're the ones who know about the outside world and you don't. Like the irony there is stunning. And the third reason, so that was the second reason, the second thing I found annoying about them is this us versus the mentality. First reason is they don't believe the mainstream media, but they like to believe their own fake news. Third thing is they just don't have much understanding of how the world works. And I think this is part of the reason they dislike the elites, the global elites, the immigrants, because they're uneducated. And when you're uneducated, by definition, you're ignorant about a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world, right? If you haven't traveled the world, you have no idea what's going on in the world. And I reckon that most Trump supporters, they don't bother to travel outside of America, or they haven't traveled outside of America, or they don't have a passport. They haven't made a real effort to understand how the global economy, how it works. Like they just think the world can just go back in time to be like in the 1950s. But it doesn't function the same way that it did back in the 1950s. Like in the 1950s, China was a completely communist country, and it was definitely a third world country. It is definitely not like that now. It's not the same, right? From 1950s, a lot of things changed. I mean, for most Americans, maybe they don't feel that much of a difference or they feel like they have So for most Americans, maybe they felt like their status, America's standing in the world, has declined since the 1950s. And the reason for that is because in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, America was the world's leading superpower, right? We all had the USSR, the Soviet Union versus America, and those were the world's two superpowers. But that was because the other parts of the world were devastated by war, and their economy was not that great. Like Europe was devastated by war, Japan was devastated by war, and China was still, fully communist at the time. It was a central economy, so it was a different time, and that time is not coming back, and it can't come back because the world has changed, right? Now, like different countries have been developed, right? You're the European Union, right? China has become the second largest economy in the world. Like things have changed and developed, and you can't just go back to the 1950s. Like the global economy is now interdependent on each other. It makes it unfeasible to isolate the US from everyone else. It makes it unfeasible to back out of NATO, like, or from free trade agreements, because you're connected with everyone else. Manufacturing used to be based in the US, right? We used to have a lot of skilled workers in the US, but the economy changed, right? Now it's been outsourced mostly to China and Mexico because America has become more of a service-based economy, whereas China and Mexico and them are still developing countries, I guess. So they still have the infrastructure to be those manufacturing economies, right? We're no longer that kind of manufacturing economy anymore. And it's easy to blame like global elites or immigrants for taking away your jobs and keeping all the wealth for themselves. But the real truth is that Americans have to keep up with this change. I mean, like Republicans were the ones who originally had the mantra of doing things on your own, making yourself rich without government welfare or intervention, right? Like Republicans or right-wing people, they like to say that, oh, you're surviving on food stamps or whatever, or you're not paying taxes, you're not doing anything. So why don't you try to make yourself rich and keep up with the times, if you don't want to do that? Like you're on your own mentality is a very conservative point, right? So like, why don't they do that? Like that's what immigrants do. Immigrants pretty much are living that dream. They try to find the American dream, just like many other people. Once they make it big, once they work hard to get rich, make lots of money, they become the same people that those people hate, right? They become the Hollywood people, the Hollywood elites, the Silicon Valley elites. But the thing is, they were once immigrants. They were once the same people as them, right? They just worked hard to get there, just like everyone else, right? Ronald Reagan, John Wayne, they were huge conservative icons. They were from Hollywood. Lots of immigrants came on H-1B visas, which now is being restricted by Trump and hated on by Trump supporters because they think it's taking away their jobs. But those are the same people that founded Google, Yahoo, Intel, eBay, and many other tech companies, right? That contributed a lot to the American economy. So the point is, like, they shouldn't blame immigrants or Muslims for all their problems, when the truth is that there's been like a technological shift in the industry as we moved from an agriculture industry back in the 1800s into a service economy in the 20th century, to an IT-based economy in the 21st century. You got to change with the times or you risk being left behind, right? So those jobs from China, India, they aren't coming back unless we depress wages by a lot and we recreate a lot of the infrastructure that we had in the 1950s, which is, like I said, impossible because the entire world has changed, not just us. If we don't do that, so if we don't, and we try to make things in America again, if we just try to bring the jobs back to America from China or Mexico, but guess what? Like the price of all the goods are going to go up by at least double, like I said, because the labor costs right now are totally different. And the fact is that they keep blaming immigrants and global elites for their troubles, but they're the ones that should be re-educating themselves, getting a new skill set, right? Like lots of Trump supporters, they believe in these global conspiracy theories, like the NWO, the Bilderberg Group, the Bohemian Grove Trilateral Commission. They see them as a group of elites trying to take over the world. But do you know where those conspiracy theories originally come from? Do you know why people have conspiracy theories? Is that they come they come from people who don't know what's going on. So they just assume the worst and they just make up these stories that they think this happened and this happened. They try to make up a story. Conspiracy theories come from people who are paranoid, right? They come from people that try to make up stories to justify this and that, and they just assume the worst. And so the global elites, the people who have the money and power, they have the ability to influence things going on in society. So they try to meet and decide what's best for society. And most of these groups, these global elite groups, popped up after World War II. And there's a reason for that, because after World War II, as you know, the United Nations started, and people in higher up positions decided that we shouldn't have another global war like that, which is a good thing, right? We need to have a way for peace and understanding. The thing is that these groups that people like to point out that they think are taking over the world are probably more responsible for keeping us from having another world war because they have the power, to do so, right? And they have the power for global understanding, right? They try to, so I know that Trump supporters are uneducated and they feel like they don't have enough power in what things are going on right there and that global elites are deciding things for them. But the thing is, global elites probably know more than them, right? They know what's more about what's going on in the world. And so they're at the best position for preventing us from having another world war or something like that, which is a good thing. You don't want to have another world war, right? And people just like to assume the worst from them because it's a closed meeting. But I don't think it's like that. I think Trump's victory definitely upset the global elites, which Trump supporters want to believe is a good thing. But I don't think it's a good thing. I think it causes a lot of instability, global instability and uncertainty. And if people bother to study history, you would know that before World War II happened, before the United Nations were created, there was constant instability in the world. Like people like to say, "Oh, today's world is a mess." Trump even said that today's world is a mess. You have all these Muslims fighting against each other. You have ISIS, but the problem is, the world's always been a mess, and it was even more of a mess before World War II happened, right? Like you constantly had strife and uncertainty going on with the world before World War II, and it's not a good idea to go back to that time. It's it's not a good idea. Like that time, the entire world, wars were happening all over the world, right? And I think you'll notice that a lot less wars are happening since World War II than before World War II, when wars were constantly happening. So I think people forget that, and or they just don't know about it. And I think a lot of Trump supporters, they don't bother to read up on history and they don't know about this. But you don't want to go back to that time. You don't want to go back before World War II. That's a really not a good time for global stability, and the global economy was not dependent on each other back then. So yeah, it's definitely going to be bigger consequences if we start another world war today. And now that Steve Bannon's in charge of the nukes and stuff, that's going to be, well, it's going to create a lot of uncertainty. And if you want to go back to the way that the world was before World War II, looks like you'll have to nuke everybody. And that's not going to end well for anyone, actually. So anyways, that's just my rant today. Hope you guys learned something, and leave me a comment if you agree or disagree. That's it.